So before so the webinar will be for 1.5 hours. We will hear from 5 of our speakers who have joined us today. I will give a small background to this discussion, and then we will go ahead to our speakers. Also, one more request to the speakers to please speak slow when they speak so that interpretation can be done efficiently. People's Health Movement has been invited to participate in this event through one of our partner organizations, World Social Forum of Transformative Economies. We plan to participate along with the Colombian PHM Country Circle, also an ENLAZADOS group, which is the regional alliance of the Latin American Agroecological movement, also called MAELA, and the movement of social and solidarity economies. In response to this invitation from the World Social Forum of Transformative Economies, PHM has proposed two main activities around this conference. One is a virtual global webinar before the conference, which we are having right now, and a physical event in Cali on the sidelines of COP16 in October. Through this first activity, the online webinar that we are having now, we hope to develop PHM's critical position on this issue. As an issue, as for PHM Global, this issue is also quite new for us, and we hope to be able to develop a collective analysis. And the other objective was to prepare for the physical meeting that we will have in October in Cali. For the physical meeting, a face-to-face workshop called A Circle of the Word, Body, Territory, and Health has been proposed, and it will focus on how an extractive model destroys biodiversity and damages health. So coming back to this webinar and with this background for the event, I will go ahead and start inviting our speakers. We have 5 speakers today from different parts of the world and who will be focusing on different on looking at the theme of biodiversity through different approaches. Each speaker will have 12 to 15 minutes to speak. Around 12 minutes, I will remind you to wind up your presentation so that you can be on time. Our first speaker is David Paredes from Guatemala. David is from the National Network for the Defense of Food Sovereignty in Guatemala, also called REDSAG. It is part of MAELA that I mentioned earlier, MAELA Mesoamerica and ENLAZADOS. He's originally from northern Guatemala, from the territory of the Maya Quechua people. He is currently the coordinator for Guatemala for REDSAG and also an environmental and social activist. REDSAG, his organization, is an active part of the Latin American and Caribbean agroecological movement. He will talk about his experiences of working with these groups, of promoting actions for the defense of native and Creole seeds and the ancestral knowledges associated with them. He will share about promoting this work not just in Guatemala, but also in Mexico, El Salvador, and Honduras, and of making a common front of defense against the current consumption models. So, David, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you, and good morning, everyone. Greetings from my land. In our Mayan calendar, this is a very emotional day. We call it Emosh in our language. It is about water. So, under these influences, we are getting together today, and it's a pleasure to be addressing you. This is a very important issue that will be addressed at the COP16, and we are working and gathering from all parts of the world. So in this case, I want to greet you from our national network for the defense of sovereignty. This is a network based in Guatemala with more than 60 organizations, and we work on food sovereignty, and we struggle for defending our land and our water and the seeds and the ancestral knowledge. And we have been in touch with other movements who take action in this region, in Mesoamerica, the south of Mexico, Belize, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, and some parts of Nicaragua. So I will start my presentation by sharing screen, if you'll allow me. I think you can see that, right?
Yes.
So I want to talk to you about this alliance among these movements. We are Red SAG, and in Mesoamerica, we work with several movements like the Agroecological movement of Latin America and the Caribbean called MAELA. Together with MAELA, we joined this place called ENLAZADOS, where we met several colleagues, and we have been interacting around health issues, food systems. This has been helping us become brothers and sisters, really. And we want to start with a territorial struggle focused on defending native and Creole seeds. We have faced constant threats. There are several instruments which have been authorized, such as transgenic seeds in our region, and so we are defending our lands against this. So in the framework of the COP16 and the topic of biodiversity, we believe seeds are a fundamental part. So the Nagoya Protocol, Cartagena Protocol, these are important documents. The ABS instrument as well. I was going over it, and together with other international covenants like that of 169 or the Declaration of the Peasants and the indigenous peoples, all these declarations and documents give us the opening and the space to defend our native seeds, our lands, because native seeds in particular are really important in our community. Our thought, our mindset of our peoples is related to this. This is where we get the energy of our food in order to subsist, to live. So from the vision of the peoples, this is an equilibrium. Everything is complementary. We all play a part. And in this case, the native seeds are a big part, and it gives us a sense of community. Around seeds is the vision of the indigenous peoples, the sense of belonging to a community, struggling for a territory and defending our natural resources. So having all these varieties is really important. And here you can see a picture of corn, which is one of our most sacred crops. They are all sacred, but corn is particularly very important in our community because it's the ancestral document of peoples, we say sometimes. It indicates we are made of corn in that relationship. But we have found several threats and potential threats. And you all know about this because it's everywhere, but CropLife has several companies that you can see on screen, and they are pressuring our territories, and they are affecting our seeds and taking all the ancestral knowledge. As we know, corn is thousands of years old, and the scientific programs here are trying to, from a colonial perspective, extract knowledge as well. They want to extract knowledge from us. So they are exercising pressure against us. And several instruments are being generated which make it difficult for us. Such is the case that in our territory, there is a system, an economic system to integrate Mesoamerica. They have created rules of biosecurity of modified living organisms for farming uses, and they implement transgenic seeds. So they allow trade, transportation, and research, and all of that. And in our country, in our region, transgenic seeds are becoming more and more present, and they are affecting biodiversity. So in that sense, regulations have been favorable for the companies because that's what they're after. They want to create profit and to extract our knowledge. That is why we need to have alliances to defend our land. Another topic that is important and that we cannot ignore is the UPOV, which is an initiative of legislation on supposedly the protection of vegetal obtention. Now, through these laws, they want to privatize our knowledge. They want to take away our knowledge and to erase all of our participation, our historical participation. And I want to emphasize this is mostly about corn. We have been struggling against this for a long time, and these are real dangers. Transgenic seeds are used in many parts of our region, and we had managed to annul a law before, but now it has been reinstated. So it is a real threat on our countries. El Salvador, Honduras.
También haciendo de contrabando todo el tema de los transgénicos, la biopiratería está presente. Entonces, la lucha de
And
los pueblos hemos
there
estado
is
insistiendo ante los
biopiracy as
gobiernos
well. It does
que
exist.
deben
So
dar marcha atrás en estas iniciativas. Esto nos ha
governments
llevado a hacer
have to
planteamientos
go
desde
back
diferentes
on their
territorios.
steps because
Acá en
these
Mesoamérica,
initiatives
pues
are
tenemos la
really
presencia del
dangerous
pueblo
for our
maya,
land.
del pueblo garífuna, del pueblo
The
xinca,
Mayan
del pueblo
peoples, the
mestizo, ¿verdad?
Xinca
Que
peoples,
compone esta región
so many
mesoamericana
peoples that
y
compose
juntos
this
hemos estado haciendo ese
Mesoamerican
llamado
region. And
para
together we
retirar
have
estos
been
instrumentos y que
urging
nos
the
van
governments to withdraw
afectando,
these
¿verdad?
instruments that affect our
Esta es
land
una
so
realidad. Hemos
poorly.
estado convocando, como le
So
digo,
this
convenios
is a
como
reality,
169, como la Declaración de los
and there
Derechos
are
Campesinos para que nos
treaties like
amparen,
that of
porque no ha existido una
169 and the
consulta y
Declaration of
mucho
Peasant
menos el
Rights
consentimiento
to help
previo,
us
libre e
because
informado que
there
hacen
hasn't
mención
been any kind of
los
consultation
documentos del
upon
Convenio de
us.
Biodiversidad, y esta es la petición que nosotros estamos
So
enfocando desde
we
nuestros territorios
are
en la
doing a
COP16,
petition from
como
our
también
countries at the
todo el
COP16.
trabajo de los pueblos ha sido una gran
All the
contribución
work
para
of the countries
salir
has
adelante en el tema de los
contributed
sistemas alimentarios,
to
¿verdad? Nos dimos
move
cuenta en las
forward,
crisis como la vivimos del
and
COVID,
we have
quienes
seen in
sacaron
crises
adelante
such as
toda
that
la
of the
enfermedad de los pueblos,
COVID-19
la mayor parte de
that
los
the
pueblos
people who
seguimos
managed
viviendo
to
donde no llegaban ni
pull
siquiera las
through
vacunas ni
were
medicinas,
our
eran
communities.
los
We didn't even
pueblos
have
en sus
vaccines, but the
territorios, ¿verdad? Y con
peoples
toda
in
esa
their
sabiduría
territories, they
ancestral, la
managed
medicina,
with all their ancestral knowledge and their
logramos
medicine
salir adelante.
to pull through. So I was saying there was an articulation among these movements and with brother countries. We want to have a collective fight and to defend our seeds, our corn, our herbs, our crops. So in that sense, we have been generating alliances, and you can see some of the icons of our movement, some of the logos. And we are preparing for the Conference of Parties 16 to bring our knowledge, bring our ideas, and we are going to have a talk there in which we will express how we are conducting our struggle in Mesoamerica, because we have, as I was saying before, in our language and in our culture, a relationship with nature, with water more specifically, and we have to fight for our ancestral knowledge, and we have to protect it. We have to protect our spirituality, and we have messed with the system, they say. But it's actually what we're doing is we are creating proposals. This is a law for biodiversity and ancestral knowledge that was proposed in Guatemala in the Congress, and we are pushing for it. But in parallel, our territory is in danger. We want to have self-determination. We want to declare our territories free of transgenic seeds. That is where we're going. We want food systems that are ancestral to be acknowledged. We are facing terrible crises all over the world. Climate crisis, food crisis. So we need to resume all the processes of the ancestral peoples, and it's the only way for us to move forward. We must prohibit transgenic seeds. This is urgent. There is a series of hurricanes in the Pacific area, and that is because of all the damage to the biodiversity. So, as peoples, we have taken care of these sacred foods and our sacred places like the woods and the earth. And so we think that our struggles must be recognized. I think because of time constraints, I'm almost finished, but that is our proposal. This is the Enlazados group, and we are very thankful for this space. And we want you to know that we are struggling in the territories to defend our biodiversity. So thank you so much. And this is the end of my intervention.
Thank you so much, David, for emphasizing the importance of the indigenous knowledges in preserving seeds and its importance for biodiversity, and also how corporations are trying to capitalize from it, which is seen everywhere. Thank you for your intervention. I'll now move to our next speaker, Farida. Farida Akhter from Bangladesh is the founding executive director of UBINIG Policy Research for Development. Apart from being part of the health movement, she is the convener of Women and Biodiversity Network and organizes Nyay Krishi Andolan, which is a biodiversity-based farming system. She has conducted extensive research on women's development, health and nutrition, agriculture, food sovereignty, fisheries, handloom weaving, garment industries, and related development issues. So basically today, Farida will be mainly speaking of her experience of being involved in these different movements and these different themes, and also its implications for health as also nutrition. Thank you, Farida. You can start.
Thank you, Deepika. Let me just share this screen. And first, I want to really thank David, because most of the things he's talked about are true for us. And so, although I'm not going to talk much about only rice, which is the same as corn in Guatemala, but when he was talking about it, I was feeling that, in the same way, rice is also being taken away from us by the companies, corporations. So I will just talk a little bit more on biodiversity and how the policies are changing. And for example, now just look at this picture that this woman is holding two papayas in her hand, and from her small piece of land, she has all kinds of food because these are all, she is practicing biodiversity, and she's, in economic sense, she might be poor, but she's quite rich in her, food and other resources. So Bangladesh is a party of CBD, and it's really signed in a very early 1992, and and it's a small country, but we have 5 broad types of ecosystems, which is very important for us to know, in order to know biodiversity. So we have coastal and marine ecosystem, we have inland freshwater ecosystem, we have terrestrial forest ecosystems, hill ecosystems, and homestead ecosystems. So I'm just showing 2 different pictures of this hilly, and here there are so much of biodiversity, in diverse crops, diverse food, medicinal plants, and the indigenous knowledge that people practice in these areas are really quite amazing. And on the other hand, when you look at the water aquatic ecosystem, and that is quite amazing also, how the aquatic biodiversity is rich, and people are surviving on it. So how is called depressed land, wetlands, and they are really very important source of our food, particularly inland fisheries. And so hill ecosystem cover around 12% of the country's land, and they have really a lot of genetic variation in plants and animals. So just like David, you have lots of varieties of corn. We have more than 7,000 varieties of rice in the country, and which is in the gene bank. And in our Naya Krishi farmers' hands, there are more than 3,000 varieties. So also Bangladesh is a country of origin for one of the countries of origin, including India, is for eggplant. So that is, one of the story is that companies are now taking these for GMOs. Our food supply sources come from various ways, like crops. We have all these rice, wheat, lentils, vegetables, So that is 70% of our food supplies. And we have a lot of fish varieties, 260 species of sweetwater and 475 species of marine fish. Then Hilsha is the most favorite fish, a GI product, and Bangladesh stands first in the 11 countries it is found. Shrimp is also, it has also many varieties, and so fisheries alone also contribute 5% of the food supply. And livestock, we have a lot of, you see the This is also part of the livelihood of women, the poor women who keep goats, and they just supply the meat, for the people in the country. So the goats, buffalo, sheep, these are part of our food supply. But when you look at the policies related to biodiversity, particularly after the, CBD, there were a lot of efforts to talk about, saving the biodiversity, but we had like national environment policy, there were before, but only in 2018, and then forest policy is there, biodiversity strategy and action plan is there, and sustainable development strategies. Bangladesh Biological Diversity Act, this is 2017, Protected Area Management Rules 2017, Ecological Critical Area Management 2016, but there are like Bangladesh Biosafety Rules, which is in 2012, but we don't still have, and there is guideline for in 2007, but we still don't have Biosafety Act, which was very much necessary as part of Cartagena Protocol. And but the companies are coming to find easy way for introducing genetically modified crops. Now, health and nutrition situation is not very good. You can see that 36% of children are under 5 are stunted, 33% are underweight, that means more than 1/3 are suffering from severe malnutrition, and 14% of children are wasted. So, and pregnant women suffer anemia, and so there are like a lot of NCDs, including cardio, non-communicable diseases. So these are quite spreading, and it's going more and more, and also becoming more and more foodborne diseases. Women are at an increased risk of developing NCDs, and 94% of all maternal deaths occur in the lower middle income countries, and in Bangladesh it is also quite high. And also there is high prevalence of diabetes, and it is higher among women, and women's fetal health and reproductive health is severely affected. So I'm mentioning this because the kind of food that is being promoted with so-called modern agriculture or industrial agriculture is becoming the cause of cancer and other diseases because of increased use of pesticides and herbicides and all other chemicals. But corporations are there they are coming with solutions for nutrition. So what they do, instead of going to the rich biodiversity we have, they are offering like vitamin A supplementation and anemia, iron folate supplementation for women and children, and then control of iodine deficiency disorder, so salt iodization program. So it doesn't matter who has deficiency or not, all the salt is iodized and you have to have it. Zinc supplementation is there also as management of diarrhea, but again, it is so much given to all people, no matter who needs it or not, because the companies need a big market for their product. So vitamin D, calcium supplementation, and food fortification, is coming in a big way. And this is quite worrying, and they in fact have a food fortification act, and which allows the companies to have more and more food fortified rather than having coming from the natural sources. This is an example that World Food Program is using fortified rice, and these fortified rice kernels, they claim that it is like ordinary rice, but they also say that it has essential vitamins and minerals. And so the poor people do not need to have other vegetables or anything. It has, this rice is like self-sufficient. It has all the vitamins and minerals needed for them. So this is in a way depriving the poor from other sources of food, from the biodiverse food. And they say that they have lack of access to this, but instead of making fish, fruits, and vegetables accessible to poor, they are giving solutions like this. And I'm sorry that World Food Program is very much involved in doing it. That means United Nations is not playing a good role for this. And I think for CBD, these issues should come up, that how the other United Nations programs are allowing the corporations to destroy biodiversity. So this is one thing that we are fighting against, the GMOs in Bangladesh. And one example is Briti brinjal, which I'm not showing today because of lack of time. But this is golden rice is in the process of getting approval. And you can see that we are used to having brown rice or red rice, lot of different varieties of rice, but they are going to give us a special golden color rice, which they claim that will solve the problem of vitamin A deficiency, and but which we can get from many other sources like this. You can see that which village people, even with a small piece of land, can have it from their own sources, and it's not expensive at all, and they can have easily, and they can enjoy the taste of all this food. They don't need this kind of I call it nonsense GMOs, and they're just promoting it as a health intervention, as a nutrition intervention, which is really very very bad, and we are fighting against it. We are in the Philippines already. They have stopped the golden rice and brinjal in the court, in the Supreme Court, they have stopped it. So in Bangladesh, we are trying to stop it as well. But what is happening now, because there are now poultry sector coming up, as a promoter of food, but then we are having the issues of feed. This is happening. So like, even though we are having local poultry industry, but the feed is coming from United States with GM soybean. So then we cannot control it. So there are other ingredients which are genetically modified. And then we are finding that there are new and emerging pathogens coming up, and so which are posing threat to food safety. So now we are not talking about only food security, we are talking about food safety. And in fact, our food sovereignty concept is much better, which incorporates farmers' rights and all the different kinds of food that we could have produced. But now with corporate food industries, we are also bringing in more diseases and problems. So antimicrobial resistance is quite worrying nowadays. It is increasing in pathogens. So because of use of antibiotics in poultry, in fish, in shrimps, it goes into human bodies, and now there is a lot of resistance to antibiotics. So, they talk about that we have limited livestock breeds, so we have to bring cows from United States of America or from Australia so that they give more milk. And but our cows give quite a, maybe it's not giving as much as the American cows, but the American cows also have very special feed. But our cows survive on straws and the grasses that grows around in the biodiverse fields. And so they are promoting a lot of foreign breeds. And in the fisheries sector also, they are talking about genetic degradation. So they are talking about farm fish species. But this is also, again, another challenge that we are having. But if we allow our water bodies to be safe and free from pesticides, it will give us a lot of fish, which are very good for nutrition. So there is a concern of declining fish population, but that is because of the habitat is lost and it is poisoned, and we are. So I just want to show this picture, in this small piece of land that small farmer is having, but you can see that how many different crops they have grown in one season, and they are able to ensure their nutritional needs and also food needs. And nearby there are like rivers and ponds where they can get fish. And also from these byproducts, they can have fodder for the cows. So the basic thing is nutrition cannot be ensured from monoculture or industrial food production. And I think this has to be discussed in the COP very strongly, that how in the name of nutrition support, they are actually giving our food production to the corporations, and it is destroying the biodiversity. So this is something that should come up very strongly in the COP. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Farida. Yeah, in a way, you continued what David had started and showcased how the sovereignty of food systems is the best way to preserve biodiversity. And also, I think we got a good sense of how these technocratic policies to solve nutrition, etc., are being pushed in different countries, especially in the global south. So, for example, in India, iron fortified rice is being pushed majorly. And now even government's own people are questioning it and suggesting that, diverse diets is the best way to solve problems of nutrition and not fortification. So thanks for letting us know what's happening in Bangladesh. I'll move to our next speaker now. Our next speaker is Nitin Ramakrishnan. He's a senior researcher working with the Third World Network. He has been following the ongoing discussions for a treaty at World Health Organization, that is the pandemic treaty. The discussions for it started after the COVID pandemic, and how can different countries together deal with it. And he's also following issues of biodiversity at the COP16 and other forums. So as we know, the Biodiversity Convention has had 3 objectives, and Nitin will focus on the third objective, that is the fair and equitable sharing of the benefits arising out of the utilization of genetic resources, and 3 selected agenda items key to public health that would be considered in COP16. These 3 agenda items are digital sequence information, which is the genetic information stored digitally. Second is biodiversity and health resolution. And the third is specialized international ABS instrument, which David also discussed earlier, access and benefit sharing. So biodiversity has, a convention has had all these discussions earlier. So he will look at it more from a developing country perspective and the ongoing WHO negotiations that are happening right now. So yeah, thanks Nitin for joining us. You can start.
Thank you, Deepika, and thank you, People's Health Movement, for this invite. It's very timely and very reassuring for me because, to an extent, we were trying to figure out who are our, whom all we can reach out actually in Kali and raise civil society voices to the governments and get certain ideas and certain rights clearly secured and established. So I will try to be very quick and brief because we have to fit into the time frame and focus on more on formal agenda of the COP16, the Conference of Parties meeting on CBD, Convention on Biological Diversity. Actually, the COP16 also happens alongside where they sit as meeting of parties to Nagoya Protocol and Cartagena Protocol. And Nagoya Protocol is specifically on access and benefit sharing, where basically countries who are sovereign over natural resources would facilitate access to their genetic resources to foreign researchers and developers, and perhaps on an agreement which would give them fair and equitable share to the benefits or outcomes of the R&D processes happening. So that's the Nagoya Protocol context, and Cartagena Protocol, of course, as you know, it's more on biosafety and biosecurity issues. So I would quickly go into some of these agenda items and explain what is happening in these agenda items and try to perhaps put forward some suggestions for People's Health Movement positions. So as Deepika said, I'll focus mostly on 3 issues, which is the DSI solution, digital sequence information solution, and a resolution which will happen on biodiversity and health. And then there is a discussion happening on specialized ABS instrument. I will also slightly touch upon certain issues associated with synthetic biology and living modified organism. Thanks, Farida and David, for discussions or giving out the reality of many of those issues at the ground level. Sorry for being formalistic and working on the policy documents out there in the conference. So because of time constraint, I will not go into the first 5 slides, but just will tell you which item of agenda this issue will be addressed. So in CBD COP16, the Conference of Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity, under item 9, digital sequence information on genetic resources will be discussed. And the major idea is to establish a multilateral mechanism which would perhaps fair and equitably share benefits arising out of the use of digital sequence information. We will slowly look into it, what exactly this is about. Then there is an agenda item 22, which is on biodiversity and health, which must be very, very important for People's Health Movement. There was a proposal to develop a draft global action plan on interlinkages between biodiversity and health. This was supposedly to be adopted in COP15, which is 2 years before, but it was not adopted for the reasons it was not drafted well. Especially the document was drafted in a technocratic, or I would say from the perspective of scientific expertise, not necessarily reflecting out of on the socio-economic inequities as well as social determinants of health. So the bodies or the technical forums who worked on this draft were actually invited to revise their work on the basis of taking into account issues like development divide, etc. Unfortunately, the situation has not changed much. Then I will move on to the meeting of parties of Nagoya Protocol. They have an agenda item 15, which we'll discuss on specialized international access and benefit sharing instruments. I will also explain what this is in a minute's time. Then, as I told, there are 2 more agenda items which I might not be in a good position to explain or address questions, but I wanted to bring it to the attention of all of you here in People's Health Movement, because so that you can also go back and work on, do your homework on these issues and raise voices from your concern, which is item number 24 on synthetic biology. So this comes under COP, which is the CBD Convention's meeting. And then in the Cartagena protocol, you will see item 11 and item 12. Item 11 is on risk assessment and risk management, and item 12 on living modified organisms, more about precautionary principles and evaluating the benefits and challenges or problems certain scientific research and development processes would bring to the world. So let me go back. My key issue, if at all I'm not able to finish all the points, I would leave the document, the slides with you, and I'm available for any time bilateral meeting with any one of you. Please feel free to contact me or the TWN members who are working on these issues for long time. Please collect our contact from Deepika. Now in COP16, there is a problem about digital sequence information. I will tell you in a nutshell what this is. So as you all know, when a genetic resource is shared by a country or a provider or farmer to a scientist for further R&D on that particular genetic resource, if there is good products coming out of it, or good scientific knowledge coming out of it, or even commercial benefits coming out of it, a fair and equitable share of those products or knowledge or even commercial benefits, the monetary contribution should go back to the provider, at least if the provider community at large is, for example, if it is from a country, Bangladesh, it should go back to Bangladesh. This is one of the third objective of the Convention on Biological Diversity. Now, what has happened is that science has developed, technology has developed. Users nowadays can actually work only on the sequence information, which is the genetic information, the genetic code contained in the genetic material. And this will be stored in computers to for use, do research digitally, and then produce benefits out of it. Now, what is happening is that in this process, researchers are not going to actually, are lesser reaching out to physical materials. So they are not actually contacting the government authorities from where the institute or the providers from where the materials are coming, and they're not entering into agreements with them to share benefits. So they're bypassing what you call as benefit sharing agreements by using the sequence information stored digitally and working and doing R&D based on that information digitally. And because you also know the synthetic biology has now grown, like so many medicines, like for example, an mRNA vaccine which you have used, which you have seen in COVID-19, is not developed out of using the pathogen per se, but the information of RNA sequence has been utilized for R&D, and then the vaccine has been developed. So what we have seen is that countries actually lack of access to those vaccines. So now this is a big challenge, especially in this case of like what we call as infectious diseases, health products, like access to vaccines, access to medical countermeasures or health products are actually can be secured through an effective ABS system. But now DSI is actually shifting the dynamics of ABS, and you're not able to you're not able to secure those benefits. Now the sequence information are being increasingly made available in databases which are unregulated and unaccountable. And all these are unregulated and unaccountable in the name of open science and open access. And some of them even allow anonymous access. So you don't even know who uses your sequence information and sequence material. This is a big concern for farmers in the FAO sector, because their materials are sequenced, and then people are working on their PGRF, which is the seeds. And you don't have FAO, or you don't have any information who is actually working on your seeds. So this kind of a situation is very problematic in FAO as well. Now, several developing countries lack capacities to regulate data flows through these unaccountable databases. Especially, their scientists rely on those databases located in North for better recognition and better quality databases, etc. So the scientists actually put onto these databases because they get some of accession number from them, and then they get better collaboration from what you call as foreign researchers, and so that you become internationally known figure. So some of those issues are happening. Now, Global North actually argue DSI is not a genetic resource, which is information is not a resource, because the convention somehow unfortunately defines resource as material. And then they are saying there shouldn't be no mandatory benefit sharing if someone is making products or knowledge out of the information. It's a very bizarre argument, but that's how their position is, especially Japan and Switzerland. So benefit sharing is thus compromised. And what we must understand is it's not just benefit sharing, even the knowledge, the genetic information is being stored in databases to which your governments have no control, or developing country governments have no control. So if the control of that information is also being shifted to the developed country parties. This is the problem. Now, what's the solution which has been proposed based on COP15 discussion is that build a multilateral system to provide benefits coming out of it. So generally, when you send a material, it's from your country. It's from, for example, if a farmer of country A is giving it to a scientist from country B, essentially the scientist would put an agreement with country A, or perhaps along with the farmer, or only to the government based on their national laws, because countries are identified as a sovereign rights holder of genetic resources. Indigenous peoples, they have a separate right over their genetic resources. So benefit sharing agreement directly goes into indigenous people as well. But now this has been changed. They're saying, look, DSI is everywhere. Actually, DSI is not everywhere. DSI is only in unaccountable databases, but they say it is everywhere. And they are saying you will have to use multilateral benefit sharing system. And in that also, very interestingly, they follow the European model. So the European model is that you can work, your country is sovereign, indigenous community is sovereign, until the data is stored or it is deposited in a public database. So if the database is allowing access to your information to the public, then you don't have any more sovereign rights or any more rights on it, especially for benefit sharing. And the benefits will be taken care of by the multilateral mechanism. So this is the proposal of Europe, and this is what the co-chairs of the forum is also trying to put forward. Now, the sad part of this is they are saying there cannot be non-monetary benefit sharing. So you produce a vaccine, you might not be getting vaccine, but the vaccine company will give some money to a global fund, which will be further utilized by the countries or governments or people for biodiversity conservation. So this is a very bizarre logic, because in Nagoya Protocol, you have to share money as well as non-monetary benefits. So if you come to WHO, the most important thing is not money, but access to vaccines, access to health products. Now, this is being significantly challenged by this proposal. And they're not at all proposing any form of regulation or accountability over databases. So you clearly get stuck. You don't know what will happen, how you get these benefits. Even the monetary benefits, the money, they're saying they're not actually obligating users to share money, but they're telling countries can adapt some measures to encourage these companies and users to provide some money, right? It's not even a legally binding obligation on the users to provide even monetary sharing. So it's a very bad situation at this stage. Now, the implications for public health is that unaccountable and voluntary benefit sharing system compromises equitable access to health products. Firstly, like the products like mRNA vaccines, fully developed using DSI, not using physical materials, it will not be guaranteed because it's a non-mandatory benefit sharing, at least from the northern concern. Now you think about physical genetic material. So for example, let us imagine there is a plant medicine for which you could be utilized, or plant genetic material which you could utilize for developing a cancer medicine. Earlier, the researcher has to come to your country, get this plant from your country, put an agreement with your government, say that, okay, I will give some products freely for you or affordable price for you, some of these kind of arrangements, or I will give you a manufacturing license to one of your companies, something like this will happen. But none of these things happen now, because someone can actually sequence, like, do take the information of this plant genetic material and put it in a database, and the researcher can anonymously access it and use it. So it is going to reduce the benefits coming from the use of materials also, not just the use of DSI. Now, the third problem is unaccountable databases and anonymous sequence sharing can also raise biosecurity concerns. There was a huge discussion going in US government, especially in Congress, about biosecurity concerns of sequence sharing anonymously, especially, for example, sequences generated from viruses like COVID-19 or Ebola, etc. Right? Then the third one is absence of non-monetary benefit sharing, which was also discussed. Now, what is the implication for pandemic treaty negotiation? As you all know, after COVID-19, in WHO, there is a legally binding treaty being negotiated. And in the legally binding treaty, there is a proposal to have a pathogen access and benefit sharing system, which would actually give you some form of access to health products, access to manufacturing licenses to southern countries, to developing countries, and also money to build laboratory and diagnostic capacities, including health systems. Now, what is happening here is, if the DSI solution in the CBD becomes voluntary, in WHO, the developed countries will come and argue, hey, you cannot have voluntary benefit sharing from the sequence information of the pathogens. Mandatory benefit sharing. You can have mandatory benefit sharing perhaps from the pathogen sharing, but if you are sharing the sequence information of pathogens and somebody is making products out of it, you will not have guaranteed benefit sharing from such a sharing of sequence information. And under the pandemic treaty, to prevent pandemics, to assess the risk of the pandemics, you have an obligation to share the sequence information at the earliest. So you make available the sequence information to the international community at the earliest. Someone will anonymously use it and make the product, and that product will be sold back to your community at higher price. So this is going to be a bigger challenge for all of us. Sorry. I think my computer has gone off. Let me connect it from my mobile. Give me a minute. Am I still connected? Can you hear me?
Yes, Nitin, we can see and hear you.
Okay, so maybe it's good. If I get lost, please let me view. Okay, come back. Okay, thank you. So this is the situation in which we are here. So there is also actually WHO and Africa group, as well as the 72 developing countries, including Latin American countries, had actually initially called in WHO for establishing WHO within WHO itself a database. Now this debate is still going on, but mostly kind of the North has put a lot of pressure to avoid this solution. So there is some discussion regarding, okay, whether we can have databases entering into agreement with WHO, kind of outsourcing, so that at least they remain some form of accountable to WHO. But this is happening. But if the CBD discussion or the CBD solution does not speak about the problems of unaccountable databases, then again in WHO you will see pushback against the proposals to have an accountable database. So it has to be a significant push from our side to ask for accountability of databases sharing genetic sequence information. Firstly, to let the public know about who are the users of the sequence information from those databases. Second, we should specifically push for mandatory benefit sharing from the use of DSI. We should say using DSI is just using genetic material digitally. which means we really want benefits coming out of it fairly and equitably shared. So we should push definitely hard for these two things. So this is the first concern. Second thing is about the biodiversity and health resolution. I have put some paragraphs from its preambular paragraph as well as operative paragraph. Now, this resolution is trying to adopt a global action plan on biodiversity and health, the interlinkages, the connection between them. Especially this has been developed using the collaboration of 4 different international organizations, WHO, FAO, UNEP, and the World Organization for Animal Health, WOAH. Now, the problem with this proposal is that they are actually pushing ahead some idea called as One Health agenda, which we all know is a very important agenda from our perspective, One Health approach, which is a very good proposal or good scientific approach towards health, a holistic approach towards health. But post-COVID-19, this approach has been appropriated for a biosurveillance agenda. Certain high-level communities have been, scientific communities have been formed. They're using this approach just for extending surveillance obligations and picking up pathogens from different parts of the wildlife and trying to develop countermeasures out of it or health products out of it. It's not about integrating the right kind of healthy environment to human life. That kind of an approach has not been formed out. So this was called out, and last COP15, this One Health high-level panel funded by Germany and France in WHO, and the quadripartite were explicitly invited to take into account the differences between developed and developing countries and to revise the action plan. I must say that has not necessarily happened. And there is a reluctance on referring to UNFCCC, the climate change resolution, the Paris Agreement, etc. They're putting all those in brackets. And you can see the last part, like they are talking, the pandemic treaty is only about, or the most important term of pandemic treaty is about wildlife surveillance, which is not true. So this is how the narrative is happening, building in the global action, draft global action plan for biodiversity and health. You can see what this is about, but what I want to actually say is that there is nothing global about it. It's actually prescribing certain actions to countries to do nationally, and then they want these international organizations to channel funds into countries to adopt some of these national measures. And they have some around 14 areas of action, which I've put here. The most important thing you would find here is that the actions they are talking about is exactly what those actions Farida and David want to actually avoid, right? What we wanted to say that these activities should not happen, it is those things getting reflected in many of the languages in global action plan, especially kind of appropriation of traditional knowledge. You can see in many ways, like recording it, making it easily available, kind of working with wild species, understanding the usage of wild species in traditional medicine, in food. And they speak about consumption, they forget to speak about food security. You know, these are big issues associated. They speak about biosafety and biotechnology, but they will not talk about precautionary principle. They will talk about climate change, but they will not talk about CBD, common but differentiated responsibilities. They will talk about pollution, but they will not talk about polluter pays principles. So these are going to be, we need to actually insert these principles back into the text before this global draft action plan is adopted. I'm not going to explain because time is moving up, but you can refer through some of those issues. The final issue which I wanted to refer is the International Specialized ABS Instrument. This is likely an out of mainstream agenda discussions in the COP16 because it's a small issue. Like it's about like in the Nagoya Protocol, which is the protocol we were talking about, access to genetic resources and benefit sharing. There is a provision which says countries can establish or parties can establish specialized instruments for specific uses or specific purposes, certain instruments, and need not apply the Nagoya Protocol principles, provided it actually contributes to the benefit sharing. So there are certain things here. So for example, if you're establishing a specific ABS instrument for like the WHO treaty, where you are trying to get share pathogens like the disease causing agents and getting vaccines out of it. It's a specific genetic resource from for a specific purpose. If you're sharing it like that, you can call it a specialized instrument, and perhaps you don't have to apply Nagoya Protocol. But then there was a question, what is this specialized instrument? What should be the criteria for the specialized instrument? And who can establish such a specialized instrument? Can WHO or WTO or other international organization establish such an instrument? That was also be a big question. Now, what the North wants to do here is they want to get a freedom to establish these instruments anywhere they would like to, and to say that this instrument need not be even binding in nature. So you can see the problem in the criteria. They are saying, I've put red marks there, but if you can see the part, it could be an international instrument agreed through an intergovernmental process, or it could be endorsed by states, and then the instrument may be binding or non-binding. Now, this has a big problem where they might even, for example, if two laboratories, private laboratories between two countries put an agreement, and then the states endorse it as a specialized instrument, it need not apply anything from Nagoya Protocol or ABS fundamentals, and it can be non-binding, yet need not apply, it be seen as compliant with access and benefit sharing principles from Convention on Biological Diversity. So this is a big challenge. We really don't want this kind of a discussion coming out of it. We really want the specialized instrument to be a strong one, which will ensure the benefit is really going back to the people and making fair and equitable changes in the community. So, so for this, we actually have to focus a little bit more voice and energy there. I'm sure only TWN will be sitting there from the civil society side. Nobody else. Is a very off-track subject matter as far as COP16 is concerned. So this is the last slide.
Nitin, can we try to conclude?
Yeah, stopping it. So this is the synbio and living modified organisms. I'm trying to say there should be precautionary principles in both. And to discuss more about these agenda items, you can talk to TWN team. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that was a lot to process, but thanks a lot for bringing our attention to it. I think even as health organizations, we sort of miss those what are the consequences of the meeting, as well the other Nagoya and Cartagena protocol discussions on not just health, but other elements as well. I mean, the picture doesn't look very good. That is quite clear. Thank you so much for explaining this to us. I will now, so one of our speaker has not joined. She was not able to join due to internet connectivity. So I will ask Friedrich as our last speaker to please share his experiences. Friedrich Ole Ikayo, he's currently in the University of Arizona. Frederick is from the Maasai tribe, an indigenous and semi-nomadic ethnic group in Tanzania. He's currently pursuing a Doctor of Juridical Sciences degree in Indigenous Peoples Law and Policy. He's also been a teaching fellow in Environmental Justice Clinic at Vermont Law and Graduate School. Friedrich, as we know, indigenous communities have and they continue to safeguard some of the most biodiverse areas on Earth. However, conservation projects and models today have come to be associated with human rights violations and are strongly critiqued for a top-down approach on conservation and disturbing the lives of indigenous groups. So Friedrich's presentation will focus on one of the conservation project, which is being taken out, which is being implemented in Tanzania. And as a result of which the Maasai indigenous groups are being evicted from their from the place that they have been living in for hundreds of years. So Frederick, can you unmute and Mm, okay, Ati, Friedrich, are you there?
Muy buenos días.
Hello, Ati. So we were trying to get, let me,
Sí, buenos días. ¿Me escuchan?
Hola, a ti sí te escuchamos. Permíteme un momento, por favor.
okay,
Deepika, yeah, Frederick is there, but he was not, he didn't hear us. I think that we should take the advantage that Atiki was able
sure.
to give us to give her a few minutes to speak, and then we can join back with Frederick. Is that okay?
Hey, Deepika,
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, Friedrich, I see he's joined now.
can you? Yeah, apparently my Zoom is not is not responding. I'm trying to unmute myself and share my screen, so but it's not it's not doing that. So I just joined on the
Yeah,
using my
Friedrich, we
phone.
can hear. Yeah, we can hear you. Miguel, if you can make him can you share your screen?
Yeah, I was trying to. I just joined on my phone right now. I'm speaking through my phone right now. I was trying to share my screen because I was using my computer. But
Can you
it's not.
send me, or you can send me your PPT, I can share
It's
and you
not.
can speak.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try and probably put this. Yes. Why is it not responding? Oh, just 1 minute.
Sure.
Um, just a second.
Buenos días.
Hola,
Hi,
Ati.
Ati. Yeah, Miguel, you can go ahead.
Hola, Ati. Qué bueno que te pudiste conectar, Ati. Muchísimas gracias por intentar de nuevo la conexión. Vamos a tratar de apresurarnos con la presentación de Frederick para darte unos minutos para que puedas hablar. ¿Está bien?
Está bien, perfecto. Gracias.
Muchas gracias por poderte conectar.
Just a second. I'm almost there. Um, almost there.
Frederick, you
Yes.
are co-host. You should be able to share your screen and to open your camera if you want.
Great. I'm just gonna do that. Wait, no. Can you enable me as a participant? Hey, Deepika, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
The access so I can share my because it's a host disabled participant screen sharing. I'm not able to share my screen.
Can you share your screen now?
Yes, sweet. Yes, I can. Yes, great. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead. Yeah. Friedrich, you have
yeah,
10 to 12 minutes. Yeah.
Great. I'll be right on time. Thank you very much. And sorry about that. My Zoom was acting up. Yeah. So my name is Frederick Oleikayo, and I'm originally from Tanzania, and I'm currently at the University of Arizona, James E. Rogers College of Law. So basically, this is the Tanzanian map, as you can see on the screen. So you see the Loliondo game controlled area and the Ngorongoro conservation area. Then as well, you can see the Serengeti National Park. So apparently just before colonial times, this was just one complex. This was one complex. Then after the invention of the Germany and British government, then this area was actually demarcated to establish the Serengeti National Park. Then so my community back in the days were living in the Serengeti National Park. So during colonial invention, they paved way. So the Maasai people paved way in order to create the Serengeti National Park. So some of the Maasai people went to the Loliondo game controlled area, which is abutting the Serengeti National Park, and some of the Maasai people went to the Ngorongoro conservation area to join their fellow community members here. So as you can see now, this is a clear example of a fortress conservation model. And this is what we mean by a fortress conservation model, which entails that the eviction of the indigenous people from their ancestral homelands in order to conserve biodiversity. So apparently Tanzania has ratified the Convention of Biological Biodiversity. And 6 of the 25 globally designated biodiversity hotspots has been protected actually in Tanzania, and approximately 44% of the Tanzanian total land mass is actually protected or conserved in some type of way. So 44% of Tanzanian land mass is conserved or protected. But so this is how my community lives. These are the Maasai Boma. As you can see, it's very simple, totally dependent on the land, and very less carbon footprint in the area. So you can see right here, so the Maasai, the Shokas were known by wearing our traditional attire, which is the Maasai Shoka. We depend on livestock, so we are semi-nomadic communities. The Maasai people are semi-nomadic communities, so we depend on livestock, so we depend on grazing, so it's all about land. We depend on livestock for food. We depend on livestock. If we need anything, we might sell 1 cow, 2 cows, just to get money to buy clothes and trade in goods. So livestock keeping is our main source of food, is our cattle economy, is everything to us, and we cannot do that without the land itself. So this is the Boma in the Ngorongoro conservation area, which is actually a famous tourist attraction. So over 600,000 tourists travel to Tanzania Ngorongoro conservation area each year in order to see the big 5, such as the elephant, rhinos, buffaloes, and leopards. So you can imagine a lot of tourists, 600,000 tourists travel to Tanzania every year. So that complex, which I was talking about, the Serengeti Ngorongoro Conservation Area complex, is actually it's now too. So you have the Serengeti National Park, then you also have the Ngorongoro crater. So near the Ngorongoro crater, you probably, most of you already know about this, is that you see what is called this is the Great Wild-Beast Migration, which actually migrate every year. So it's a big tourist attraction in Tanzania and Kenya, because the 1.5 million wild beasts and other animals migrate to Tanzania and Kenya back and forth. So I think so it happens sometimes maybe in May or June every year. So it attracts a lot of tourists. So Tanzania has actually made some ambitious plans to actually increase tourism. And in doing so, increasing tourism also means that like you have to conserve a lot of land too. So by doing so, Tanzania has made those ambitious plans to at least bring 6 billion USD per year. So we also see that in the context of 30 by 30 initiatives too, which also increases the land mass that has to be conserved or protected, and reaching that goal by 2030. Nations have made worldwide, global nations have made commitments to actually increase protected or conserved areas in their respective jurisdictions. So what happens in light of all this background information is that we tend to see what is called a fortress conservation model. And what we mean by a fortress conservation model is actually exclusion of indigenous people from their ancestral homelands to pave way for protected areas or conservation areas. And what is happening on the ground in relation to the Ngorongoro Conservation Area and Loliondo area, which is about in the Serengeti National Park, you can see the Maasai people themselves are being excluded. Since the creation of the park up to contemporary times, the Maasai people have been excluded from themselves. So you can see, as one NCA resident recounts, this is actually from the 1990s. It says the world should come here to learn from us, Maasai, how we take care of our land. Come and see that there are trees, there are cows and wildlife. They shouldn't come and say what they are managing as. Which world in the whole universe was created without trees or wild animals? Why should we, who have always had everything, be shown how to conserve? There's no need to pay government employees to protect this land. It is the residents themselves who are most capable. So what we see here, I really like putting this quote in every presentation that I do because it actually speaks to the voices of the community members themselves. Maasai people have managed this area. They've conserved it since before colonial invasion, after colonial invaded Tanzania, and even after that. So what we have seen is progressive policies over the years since independence, and Tanzania got our independence in 1961. So immediately after independence, we started seeing an exclusionary model stemming from 1962. So 1961, Tanzania got independence. 1962, we started seeing management plans in the Ngorongoro Conservation Area. So you can see in 1962, for instance, you have the Fussbrook Egling Management Plan of 1962. You have the Ditchell Management Plan of 1966. Then you have the Bralap or Management Plan of 1982. And all of this stemming from that time, it was clear that the Maasai way of life was actually deteriorating in the NCA, in the Ngorongoro Conservation Area. So, for instance, in 1975, immediately after that, you started seeing no crop cultivation in the Ngorongoro Conservation Area. And we are not talking here about like massive agricultural cultivation. We are talking about subsistence cultivation by the Maasai people, which actually was a supplementary way of the Maasai people, which actually formed their traditional practices as a supplementary mechanism to rely on food or to cultivate when there's drought, for instance, when they couldn't exclusively rely on livestock keeping, or when they needed to supplement their food or supplement their diet. So we started seeing a total ban in cultivation. So you started seeing, in 1989, you started seeing 19% of the children were actually malnourished, 38 are undernourished. Then you see a little progress has actually been made in achieving human development objectives. And in this context, they are improving the lives of the indigenous Maasai people living in the conservation area. So today, what you see that, there's a law that was passed in 2009, and it's called the Ngorongoro Conservation Area Authority Act, which actually wholly ban cultivation. So you cannot cultivate in the NCA, and compounding that with the effects of climate change, for instance, it has actually made the Maasai communities themselves to actually fail to rely on food. And actually have my grandparents living in the NCA. So it has actually had dire consequences in terms of malnourishment, in terms of not having the right diet, and in terms of not being able to feed themselves. So in turn, what has that actually created? That has actually created dependency. And independence in terms of subsidized food products provided by the Ngorongoro Conservation Area Authority, so the government feeding the people themselves. And in essence, what has that created is that it has created a shift of power between the people themselves and the government. So this dependency has created a shift of power that the government controls what they eat. And in essence, truly is that, like, if you want to control any community or any person, is control what they eat. And this really goes to the core importance of food, the importance of food for the community itself. So,
Friedrich, if you can wrap up in next 2 minutes.
Yes. So it has actually created our dependency, but also it has resulted in creating a change in food system, including relatively new diseases like hypertension and diabetes. It has actually also shifted diets to include more staples like flour, while the quality of milk has been affected by changes in the quality of grass itself too. So we can see all these compounding effects of having conservation areas and forest conservation in protected areas, which has actually led to the exclusion of the community itself from the ancestral lands. But what I wanted to point out to closing down is that generating billions of dollars, we talked about $6 billion by 2025. So what is actually trickling, meaning the previous presenter talked about meaningful sharing of benefits. What is really trickling down to the community itself is very minimal, very minimal. So in recent times, what we have seen, this has just happened last month, in August 18th. We have seen the Maasai community itself protesting in the Ngorongoro Conservation Area against the evictions in the NCA. And you can see the policemen, these are the safari jeeps that were going down the crater rims. The Maasai community blocked tourism going down there. And this actually came as a result of the government withdrawing social services from the Ngorongoro Conservation Area, such as health services and education systems, schools, but also the deregistration of the villages in the Ngorongoro Conservation Area, because the election is coming up in 2025. So what they did is that they wanted to deregister the villages in the Ngorongoro Conservation Area so as the Maasai people cannot vote. So in essence, if it's deregistered, that means there's no funding that is actually being allocated to those villages, because those villages are not being registered in the first place. But the last thing that I wanted to point out, I think, so this is very crucial to all of us, is the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, UNDRIP, that has talks about sovereignty, talks about self-determination, talks about land and the importance of land to indigenous communities. And in anything that we do, we have to seek the free, prior, and informed consent of the indigenous communities in their respective jurisdiction and territories. Thank you very much. So that was quick, but thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Friedrich. It really gave us a very different way to look at biodiversity through the conservation projects everywhere, even in not just like in Global South, but also in many places in Global North, as as your colleagues had shared earlier. So thank you for sharing your experiences and your work with us. I will now ask Aati, the final speaker, to share her experiences. Aati, she's gone again. Oh, okay.
No, she's there, but she has rejected the promotion as a panelist, so I'm not sure if she's able to.
Just try once again. She may have, yeah.
She just
Is
did.
Aati, can you hear us?
Aquí estoy. Si me pueden permitir.
Yes, here I am.
La cámara, porque...
If you will allow me to turn on my camera, that would be awesome. You can do that now.
Bueno.
Is she connected to interpretation, Miguel?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, Aati. I'll first share a bit about you. Yeah. Aati is a mother and indigenous Aroaca leader of the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta in Colombia. She's an elected councilwoman of Bogota for 3 terms. She's been an indigenous commissioner for peace in Colombia. Aati's presentation will mainly be from an ecofeminist position through a deep reflection of her experiences and thought processes. She'll share about the body territory knowledge relationship through the cosmovision of an indigenous woman. And from this intersectional place of plurality, she'll try to make a case against the current consumption models and extractivism, patriarchy, and so on. Aati, we are very short on time, so yeah, it'll be great if you can finish in 10 minutes at least. So that'll be lovely. You can go ahead now.
Bueno, muchas gracias por la presentación, por la
Thank you
invitación
for
de
the
cara a la
introduction.
COP
Thank you for the invitation.
participar
We
con
are
las
expecting
reflexiones
the
frutos de
Conference of Parties, so it's
también
interesting to
la
participate with
articulación
our
y la
reflections,
participación con el
and it's
movimiento de la
interesting to
salud de los
articulate
pueblos.
with the
Un saludo en
PHM.
nombre de todos
So
los
a
procesos
big hello
de salud
on behalf
aquí de
of
los pueblos
all the
indígenas en
health
el Caribe
processes in the
colombiano.
indigenous
Colombia,
peoples
como
in
un
the
estado
Caribbean,
participando
Colombia.
del encuentro del
We
Buen
have
Vivir
been participating of
y
the
en
Buen
esta
Vivir
oportunidad
meetings,
saludar todo
and
el
in
esfuerzo
this
que el doctor
moment,
Román Vega
we want to
y todo el equipo
congratulate
del Movimiento de
Dr.
la Salud
Roman Vega
de
and
los
all
Pueblos realiza
PHM for
articular estos
their
espacios de
effort on
reflexión de cara a
articulating
la COP
different spaces of
y los
reflection before
enormes
the
desafíos
Conference
que
of
desde
Parties.
nuestros
And
territorios,
of course, the
comunidades,
territories face
saberes tenemos
enormous
para
challenges,
cuidar la
and we have
biodiversidad.
great knowledge to take care of
En primer lugar,
biodiversity.
quisiera
Well, first of all,
dejar
I would like to
mi reconocimiento por
I
quienes me
would
han
like to
antecedido en la palabra. Ha
acknowledge
estado muy
those who have
interesante. Yo me
spoken
encuentro
before me
en
because it
un
has been
municipio en las
more than
estribaciones de la
interesting.
sierra
I
donde
am
tengo señal
in
intermitente,
the
así que me
hills, so
excuso
my signal is not very
por
good.
porque no he podido
I'm
estar,
sorry about
digamos,
that, and
con mi
I'm sorry for not
presentación.
being able
Había preparado
to
unos
be here
mapas
earlier. I had prepared
fruto de
some
una
maps
investigación que he venido haciendo
that
con un equipo
were the
interdisciplinario
fruits
sobre
of
todas
a
las amenazas
research that I've been conducting with an
extractivas que tiene el
interdisciplinary
corazón
group
del mundo
about
de la Sierra
the
Nevada de Santa
extractivist
Marta, un
threats in
territorio
Sierra
que
Nevada of Santa Marta,
alberga
which
una
is a
gran
territory that
biodiversidad, que tiene
comprises
un gran
great
patrimonio cultural,
biodiversity.
que
It
ha
has
sido
great
inscrita en la
cultural
lista
patrimony,
representativa de la
and
UNESCO
it is
como un
representative.
patrimonio cultural e
It is
inmaterial de
cultural
la humanidad.
patrimony and material patrimony of humanity at
Espero
UNESCO.
que pues estos
So
mapas que son
I
fruto
hope
de años de
these
compromiso
maps,
de
which are
salvaguardar
the
este
fruits of
territorio y
years
ser
of
parte de estas
commitment, of
culturas como
safeguarding
mujer.
this
Gracias,
territory.
están allí.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for
En
sharing.
resumen,
Now, in
Quisiera
sum,
en primer lugar
I
decir
would
que
like
como
to first of
comisionada de
all
paz de
say
los
that as a
pueblos
commissioner
indígenas
of
de
peace of
Colombia,
the indigenous
en
peoples
el
of
gobierno del
Colombia,
presidente Juan Manuel Santos, tuve la
under the government of Juan
oportunidad
Manuel Santos,
de acompañar
I was
un
able
paso para
to
nosotros muy importante como pueblos indígenas de
take
la
a
Sierra
step
Nevada, y es que
forward
el
as indigenous
Estado-nación
peoples because
reconozca
the
nuestra
state
territorialidad.
recognized
Cuando
our
hablamos de
territory.
territorio, no
Now,
estamos
when we talk about
hablando de lo
territory,
mismo. Lo que vemos
we
es
are
que
not
desde el paradigma
talking about the same
occidental
thing. We can see from
hay
the
una separación
Western
entre cultura
paradigm,
y
there is a
naturaleza.
separation
Para
between
los
culture and
pueblos de la
nature.
Sierra
But
Nevada de Santa
for
Marta,
the peoples of Sierra Nevada of
cultura y
Santa Marta,
naturaleza son una
culture and
unidad
nature are
indivisible,
unity and they
interdependiente, y
are
entonces
indivisible. They are
hace
interdependent.
parte de nuestra agenda
So
como pueblos
it is
indígenas que se
part of our agenda
reconozcan
as
seis
indigenous
sitios humanos.
peoples to
Es
get
así como
our
llamamos el
territories to be
sistema
recognized.
de sitios
We call it
sagrados, nuestro
Sekotunumab. This is the way
sistema
we call
también
our sacred
jurídico que
system
reconoce a
and
la
also our
tierra
legal system that
como
recognizes
madre
land.
y como fuente del
Land as a
conocimiento y del
mother and
derecho.
as a
Esto
source
es
of
muy
knowledge
importante
and
porque
of
estamos
law.
también
This
frente
is
a un
very important
paradigma
because
de un
we are
Estado-nación no
in the
solo
face
colonial,
of a
sino
paradigm that is
antropocéntrico,
colonial and
donde las leyes, el
man-centered.
conocimiento
So
gira en
the
torno
laws and,
al
and,
ser
and
humano. Pero cuando
knowledge
se entiende que
is
la
around
tierra
the
es
human
un
being.
ser
But when
con
you
dignidad,
understand that the
que
earth
tiene unas
is a being with
inteligencias, que se
dignity
le consulta, estamos
and
hablando
which
de una
can be
democracia distinta, de una
asked,
democracia que consulta a la
consulted, then
tierra,
you face a different
que
kind of
le pide el
democracy, a kind of
permiso, y pues
democracy that
esto a veces está muy
asks
distante
the earth
de
for
los
permission.
gobiernos de los
And
estados-nación. En
governments
ese
of nation
sentido,
states
también
are
la
very far
tierra
away from this
como fuente del
concept.
conocimiento
Now, in this sense,
significa
the earth
algo
as
muy
a
diferente
source
a
of
lo que
knowledge
conocemos
is
en la
something
educación
very
formal
different from what we
escolarizada
know
en
in
ronda 4,
formal
a
school
la primaria, a la
education,
secundaria, a la
you know, primary
universidad,
school, secondary school,
implica
universities,
caminar
and
el
it implies
territorio,
to walk the land,
conectar no solo
to
desde la
connect
razón, sino desde
not
el
only
corazón,
from the
desde la
reason,
otra
but from your
espiritualidad
hearts,
con
from
la
your
tierra. Y en ese
spirituality
sentido,
with the earth.
quiero
It is
contarles
in that
que
sense that
tengo
I
una
want to tell
abuela,
you
tuve una
that
niñez con una
I
bisabuela
I have a
muy
grandmother,
cercana,
and
y
when I was
quisiera
a child, I
honrarlas,
had a great grandmother, and I would
haciendo
like
un
to honor
reconocimiento a la
them
sabiduría
by
femenina de nuestras
acknowledging the
abuelas, de nuestras
women's
ancestras,
knowledge,
que lograron
women's knowledge, our
desde
ancestors
la
who
casa, desde el
managed
fogón, que es
from
nuestra
their
primera
homes,
escuela, desde nuestras huertas,
which is our first school,
transmitirnos los
they
saberes
managed to
que
transmit their
implican una
knowledge,
sensibilidad
which
distinta
implies
de
a different kind of
relacionarnos con el
sensitivity,
agua, con la tierra, con
a
el aire, con
relationship
el
with
fuego, con
water,
las
land,
plantas, con los
air, fire,
animales,
the plants,
con
the
los
animals,
minerales y la inmensa
minerals,
diversidad humana.
and
De esta
the
experiencia de
very
vida personal
incredible
y de caminar,
diversity. It's
he
this
venido
human
trabajando en lo
experience of
que
walking the
implica
land
la
that is
relación entre
amazing.
mi
I've been
cuerpo
working
como
on the
mujer
relationship
indígena, el
between my
territorio y el
body as an
conocimiento.
indigenous woman with with
Nosotros
territory and
somos
also with knowledge.
una
Now,
representación de lo
we
que es
are
nuestro
a
territorio. Cada
representation of what our
montaña, cada
territory is.
río está en
Every
nuestro
mountain,
cuerpo allí,
every
y si se
river
afecta el
is
territorio, se
inside our
afecta
bodies.
también nuestra
So if
salud.
the
Así que
territory
hablar de
is
la
affected,
salud
so is our
es
health.
hablar
And
también de
thus,
la salud de la
talking
madre
about
tierra, de la
health is
cual
also
depende
talking
la salud
about
de nuestras
Mother
comunidades,
Earth's
y sobre
health
esto pues
and
hemos
that of our
tenido la oportunidad
communities.
de
And so, in that
reflexionar
sense,
sobre nuestros
we've been able to
sistemas propios de
reflect
salud.
on our own
Allí, pues
on our
también
own health
reconocer mi madre
systems.
como primera
I
profesional
want to recognize my mother
de
as a first
Arahuaca,
professional of Arahuaca.
estudió más o menos en los
She
años 80,
studied
antes de la
in the
Constitución del
80s,
91, antes de que
before the
fuéramos reconocidos
91
como personas,
Constitution. So before
sujetos
we
de
were
derecho, lo
recognized
cual
as
es un
people
acontecimiento jurídico
with
reciente de
rights,
la
which is
Constitución del
very
91,
recent in
es
our
enfermera,
Constitution.
es
It was
epidemióloga,
enshrined in
y tuve la
1991.
oportunidad de
My
caminar
mother is
junto
a
a
nurse.
ella
She's an
durante mi
epidemiologist as well.
adolescencia
And when I
en
was a
la
teenager, I was able to
formación
walk with her
de los
during
primeros
her
promotores en salud,
formation,
en
the formation
educación
of the
básica
first health
familiar,
promoters.
y creo que
And
es
they
supremamente
promoted
valioso
basic family
revitalizar los
education.
saberes
And I
del
think it's
cuidado, no
paramount to
solamente del cuerpo,
revitalize
de
the
la
care of the
concepción,
body
del
and the
parto, del
conception
nacimiento, de
of
la
the
crianza, de los rituales de
childbirth,
transición, del
child
paso de niña a
rearing,
mujer,
the passing from being a child, a girl, to being a woman. And also, they were very much involved with the vital processes of nature. So, women's resistance, indigenous women resistance, who have expressed themselves from their bodies, taking care of their tongues, of their seeds, taking care of the culture. I think all of that is very important. And the framework of the COP16, and especially when we have an indigenous movement that is many times abusing the voices of women and ignoring their own processes, I think it's important in this moment to have some epistemic justice to recognize the women knowledge, to revitalize our women feminine knowledge. In 2015, I was able to share with other women from my territory. We were in an assembly of more than 1,000 women, and we were reflecting on what it means as women to represent land. And in that sense, we understand that violence of the conquest, of the colony, of the republic, to this very day, even though sometimes it may be subtle, we cannot tolerate it. And violence against our land is violence against women as well. So, to sum up, I want to invite you to defend the patrimony and the feminine material as a basis of the ordering of our land, our territory, and our bodies. And also, it is fundamental to build a peace agenda, protection agenda, protection of biodiversity, which of course is conciliated with earth, with clean water, with living soils, with native seeds, and of course with great cultural diversity that is expressed in more than 7,000 languages throughout our big land, our earth. And Mother Earth is really happy that in October, from the 6th to the 12th, we'll be commemorating this resistance, indigenous resistance, that the People's Health Movement will be meeting in Sierra Nevada of Santa Marta with a very rich agenda, and it will be probably socialized with everyone. So we are very happy to be preparing for that meeting, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Aarti. Thank you for being on time, and that was lovely. And it was very beautiful to bring in that spiritual perspective to the whole discussion. We are really short on time, but I can see people had a few questions, and I think David tried to answer some of them. And people have been sharing about attacks on human environmental defenders, etc., on the chat. We will wrap up now. Before wrapping up, I will very quickly request Isabel from Colombia, who is here with us, to share about the physical workshop that we plan to do in Cali. So as I had shared earlier, apart from this webinar, there will be a physical face-to-face workshop. So Isabel, if you can, in 2 to 3 minutes or 4 minutes, if you can share about that workshop, it'll be great, and then we can wrap up.
Okay, thank you very much. And hello. From the Circle of Colombia of PHM, we have been organizing a space, an experience also at the COP16 in Cali in the context of the World Social Forum of Transformative Economies. That will be held on the 20th and 21st of October. And the preparation and organization of that activity has been done together with ENLAZADOS, which is a regional group in Latin America, which congregates different movements and agroecological expressions in favor of health, the environment, and Mother Earth, and of course, the People's Health Movement. So we would like to invite you to participate in person in Cali, Colombia, in this circle. What we would like to share as evidence and reflection and learning is how extractivism damages Mother Earth and affects all living bodies, including our own. That is why we expect this experience to allow us to keep on developing our actions and measures as activists and leaders, men and women who want to save water, life, and all collective ways of organization in favor of diversity, of course. So thank you very much. That is our invitation, and we hope you can be in Cali. We wait for you in Colombia.
That's lovely. Thank you so much, Isabel, and all the best for the workshop. It has been a lovely discussion with all of you, and very enriching, and such plurality of frameworks to look at the issue of biodiversity. I hope we will be able to take forward some of the conversations that we had here, if not all, at least with some of you, and see how we can work on it, act on it, and make it more available to everybody. I saying this, I would like to close this event. And I'd like to thank all the speakers once again. Thank you so much for joining. And also thank you to people who joined us and stayed with us till so long, and even though we went over time. And also thank you to the interpreters. And we can close now. Yeah, Miguel?
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Nitin. Thanks, Farida. Bye.
See you, some of you in Cali. Take care.
Yeah.
Muchas gracias. Se cuidan. Saludos desde Guatemala.
Bye, David.